What next? The next are the tips for avoiding academic plagiarism or misconduct. Here, I have 7 tips or 7 advice for you for avoiding academic plagiarism. First is, do keep the track of the sources that you have used in the research. You have a good habit of keeping the sources. Second, do use quotation marks properly from the original sources. That means if you copy word by word from a book or article, make sure you will use quotation mark unless you want to paraphrase it. Third, do paraphrase properly from the original sources. Paraphrase means to restate. You have to make sure your paraphrase is okay, it's acceptable. You could either too close to original statement or too far from original statement. So that is actually training, a skill. We'll talk this later. 4, do credit the original author with in-text citations. That means you're going to put this person's name and year of publication in the text so people can find the original reference if they care to study, to investigate further. 5th, do credit the original author with a reference list or lists. In other words, if you cite someone, make sure this someone's article is included in the reference list. Oftentimes, you may fail or you may forget to include the reference in the reference list, and then people cannot find it, and you get yourself into trouble. So either you cite it or you don't. If you cite it, make sure the reference is in the list. 6, do use a plagiarism checker before submission. Submission either to professor as a term paper or to a journal as a manuscript. Make sure you would do the plagiarism checker before submission. 7th, do consult professionals or librarians if needed, because this is something that you're not so aware. So you need to consult, seek advice from professionals. And of course, after you've done enough training, you don't have to consult them, but in the beginning, I want to make sure, or I would highly recommend that you consult them more often before you get yourself trapped. Books about academic misconduct and plagiarism. There are many books in either English or in Chinese, and you can try to read about them, and particularly the cases. Not only read about them, you have to tell the stories or the cases from the book to your students and your colleagues. Okay, having said all of this, just to have some elaboration of what we addressed before. First, keep track of the source. That means when conducting your research review, remember to take track of the papers and record the source for each piece of information which you deem as important and necessary for your work. You need to take a track whether it is from a book, a magazine, a journal, article, a personal blog, a video, a website. You have to keep the record before you forget about all of them. Third, particularly for students, they often commit plagiarism when they forget the sources, such that they may unintentionally present others' works as their own. Now, you have to tell your students, as a teachers, or students, you have to remind yourself, because somewhere, somehow, when you get caught up, it will be a big deal. Now, I'll just give you an example here. I'll give you an example of source tracking. On the left side are the phrases and ideas. On the right side are the citations and the sources. And you're going to make a lot of tables like this. Of course, you are not to do this one by one. You'll be too tedious. You'll be too troublesome. But for the important ideas, when you read about something you think this is important, you better develop this habit. In the beginning, it may seem troublesome. In the end, it really serves well. Okay? So please have a look at this and then try to do this later. Besides, when you quote a piece of text word by word, the copied text should enclose with a pair of quotation marks. Remember this. You'll need to paraphrase by using your own words to explain the ideas from the source if you do not want to do word by word quotation. And in your paraphrase, the main point should be rephrased or condensed. And the order information of the sentence structure should be changed as well. You cannot using the same sentence structure. If you don't believe, you will go back to the example I gave earlier. The two commencement speech have the very similar sentence structure and get the later student into big trouble. Now, what is paraphrase? I'll give you an example of paraphrasing. Here is original statement. Intimacy becomes possible once a person's individual identity has taken form. And this is a statement from Erik Erikson. Now, the first, as remarked by Erikson, intimacy only becomes possible once a person's individual identity has taken form. Right or wrong? Wrong. Why? Because you didn't put a quotation mark when you have the word by word quotation. This is kind of mistake I made earlier in a story that I described at the beginning of this talk. Let's look at a second. It is only when identity formation is well on its way that true intimacy, which is really a counterpointing as well as a fusing of the identity, is possible. Is this correct or not? Okay or not? The answer is no. You know why? Because it says too much. It's not what the original statement is. It goes far beyond the original meaning of the statement. Next, let's look at, as pointed by Erikson, quotation mark, intimacy only becomes possible once a person's individual identity has taken form, end of quotation mark. Okay? Okay. Why? Because it's a word-by-word quotation with a quotation mark. Next, when a person's identity has not yet taken form, intimacy is impossible. Is this okay? Okay. You know why? Because it's a rephrase, it's a paraphrase, rephrasing of the original statement with in-text citation. Erikson, 1968. So what you learn from this? You'll be very serious. You have to be very careful with citation, quotation, paraphrasing. Otherwise, you're either saying something that is entirely not what the original author says, or you said word by word without giving the due acknowledgement. Okay, having said all of this, let's do another practice. This time, I have a statement for you, and I say this is from Purdue writing lab. It says, students frequently overuse direct quotation in taking notes. As a result, they overuse quotations in a final research paper. Probably only about 10% of your final manuscript should appear as directly quoted matter. Therefore, you should strive to limit the amount of exact transcribing of the source materials while taking notes. And this is from Lester James, Writing Research Papers, second edition, published 1976, page 46 to 47. It's a typical in-text citation. All right, having read the sentence, my little exercise for you is, please do your own paraphrasing. If you sit in front of the computer desk, look at this. I give you 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or give yourself for paraphrasing. Okay? See, you can do the right paraphrasing for this statement. Now, please start count. Okay, time is up. Let's look at the results. First, a legitimate paraphrase is a good one. In research papers, students often quote excessively, failing to keep quoted material down to a desirable level. Since the problem usually originates during note-taking, it is essential to minimize the material recorded verbatim. In bracket, Lester 47. In bracket, Lester 46 to 47. Did you do something like this? If you do something like this, your paraphrase is superb, excellent. Let's see a second example, which is acceptable summary. Students should take just a few notes in direct quotation from sources to help minimize the amount of quoted material in a research paper. Bracket, Lester 46 to 47. If you do something like this, that's fine. I hope you're truly doing something like this. You have a good talent for paraphrasing. Now, let's look like a plagiarized version. Students often use too many direct quotations when they take notes, resulting in too many of them in a final research paper. In fact, probably only about 10% of the final copy should consist of directly quoted material. So it is important to limit the amount of source material copied while taking notes. End of story. Plagiarized. Why? You did not put the name Lester, 46 to 47. Now, you get the Lester idea become your idea. That's called academic theft. Misconduct. Stealing. Okay? Now you got it. Okay, let's do a summary about quotation and paraphrasing. First, paraphrasing is necessary when a passage is long and has multiple meanings. You need to cut it short. You need to make it simple. Second, paraphrasing can demonstrate your full understanding of the original passage without losing your own academic voice, and with the due credit to the original author. Third, when you refer to others' work, you must include an in-text citation to identify the original source of the work. And fourth, each in-text citation should correspond to a full reference in the reference list at the end of your paper. You have to keep this in mind. Now here I give you an example of in-text citation. Humor was first recorded in China around 2500 BC. In Chinese poetry and literary books of the time, Yue 2010, and then you would attach the reference in the bottom or at the reference list. This is how we do with in-text citation. And talking about in-text citation, there are different requirements. For instance, the APA has very specific formulaic guidelines for how to put in-text citations. People need to make sure that you know them when you're submitting journals within the discipline.